So I'm Romeo Timothy Carey.
And I just hope that people today get a chance to see this film because it was magic. They don't like to use that word magic in a lot of places in this world. They don't like the word magic, but if there was any magic, it was magic, the magic of Timothy Carey.
He was able to do things that an ordinary person couldn't do. He just disarmed people in a mental way.
I'm not a preacher, and I'm not drunk. I'm just a politician. He hears me. Does anybody else hear me around here? There's the First Lady. Lady, I can make you live forever.
That was like the beauty of Timothy Carey. You never really knew what was going to happen, so your eyes were glued to him.
Timmy was a very unique person. I couldn't delve into. I couldn't even begin to try to explain, what motivated him. He was a very unusual guy.
I feel like I'm in a permanent state of intellectual erection, and all my desires are fulfilled.
The year he passed away was in 1994. I got a call from the Munich Film Festival, and they said they're doing the big international film festival, and that your film was chosen by Martin Scorsese, who's in charge of the greatest rock and roll film selection for the festival. And so there I was on a plane going to Munich, and I had to make the rounds there. That was a nice piece of history that kind of started to put into place who he was and what he meant to the art world. The synopsis is that average Joe is an insurance salesman who gets bored with the profession.
Yes, I wouldn't even bother taking out insurance policies on a funeral, dear. Because when you die, your body starts to stink. That's right. They'll give you a free burial. I wouldn't worry about nothing.
And he decides that there's something more to life. And he forms this little club, kind of like a political arena for him, calls it the Eternal Man Party. Somebody in the group says, hey, why don't you form a band? Good way to publicize the party. And it becomes a name, and that name basically starts calling the band as God. And so at the height of their celebrity in music, they then were visited by the devil.
You see, you're a dark horse, and I want to see what kind of a race you can run. Burn all these bridges behind you, and listen to what I say, and you'll really become a god.
In a way, it's paralleling like a Donald Trump, someone that you thought couldn't even enter the political arena, and now he's in it.
The flesh and blood of mankind is the true God. Not in God we trust, but in superhuman being we trust.
All this celebrity and all this hubris goes to his head, so he has to go back to God to ask God if God is real and if everything he's built his whole life on, if it was worth it.
The concept of like dropping out of society and quitting your job and just being some like outlaw, starting your own religion, basically like telling people they can live forever and like all this weird stuff. I mean, he was saying all these things before it became like the thing that everyone's saying. And a lot of it is like, if you think about like the late 60s with like Charles Manson and just sort of like the kind of like alternative religions thing that was happening. I mean, he was like talking about that stuff before any of that was happening, right? He was talking about like starting his own religion, starting a cult, like going around and trying to get people to follow him. And he was using rock and roll as like a conduit to that, which is basically what Charles Manson did, right? He was basically a musician and he was trying to get like groupies to like follow him. And that's basically what The World's Greatest Sinner is about.
At the end of it, it's challenging God. Are you for real? Are you really there?
They're so tired of what they call controversial. What they say is controversial. The studios, sex and violence, controversial.
The biggest theater chains both conspired not to play it, and he knew it.
One big theater group told another theater, because they told me, they said, I just told Pacific Theaters. It was General Cinema. I remember. It was just. I just told them I'm not going to play it, and they're not going to play it. Now I had a choice then of either suing them, or not. And I just didn't want to spend my life in litigation. I wanted to sue them many times because they were boycotting the theater. Because I had people come up to me like Jack Nicholson and Romeo, the meatpacking hair son, and different people say, "Hey, this is incredible. This is a touch of genius. This is." But the theater owners refused to play it.
So that movie really never had an audience, never had a distribution, not until TCM.
There is a moment where you're like watching The World's Greatest Sinner and you're going, this guy is literally doing whatever he wants to do, for better or for worse, right? He's insane. But in the best way possible. For the network, I decided to play it because it had been so hard for me to see it. So I was like, wow, well, I'm sure there's probably many more people who want to see this movie. For the film festival, I think people were like, okay, that's a perfect midnight movie because these maniacs will love this kind of stuff. But also I think there was a lot of people there who actually had never seen it. So they were they had heard about it because it obviously has this reputation of being this crazy movie. And so people were like, couldn't wait to see it. And then when I was watching them watch it at one point, and everybody was just like, what is going on?
You're just like my mother. If I had more people like you, then my plan would triumph.
So the first time I ever knew who he was from The Killing, the Stanley Kubrick movie. And he was crazy in that.
The Killing? Oh, my God. He went down to Coney Island at Nathan's and was ordering a hot dog down there, and all these guys seemed to be mostly Italian. Hey, you're the guy in The Killing. He shot the horse. Hey, oh, God. Did they make a fuss over him? He couldn't walk up the block, without somebody looking at him,
Kubrick watched The World's Greatest Sinner. He watched dailies of The World's Greatest Sinner. Stanley Kubrick was like, he was a friend of my father's.
Timothy Carey was such an unconventional person, and he was unconventional when he was doing work for other people. I mean, he was able to insert his own personality and his eccentricities in his work that he was doing for all these famous directors.
I was fired probably more than any other actor in Hollywood. I was fired from 7 shows in a row. I hold the all-time record.
I was watching The Wild One, the movie that he was in with Marlon Brando, and he's in it for 5 minutes, and he has maybe 2 lines, but you can totally see him.
He was in Lee Marvin's gang, and he didn't have much of it was a small part, bit part. But he tried to beef it up, right? And one of the parts, they have this showdown in the street, and the 2 gangs meet, and my dad's got an opportunity to be close to Brando. So he got himself a beer bottle, and he shook it up, and when the scene happened, he took the bottle and sprayed it in his face. And Brando never forgot it because it wasn't something he was expecting. Maybe it even got my father fired from the film. He didn't even have credit on the film. My dad wasn't even credited for Wild One.
Same problem he had with the directors he had with the teachers. I don't think, I think he wanted to be in control.
I always wanted to help the director. And sometimes they don't want any help.
He was just trying to create a performance, just a small scene. I mean, it was whatever it was. He wasn't gonna compromise what he thought as an artist he needed to do.
And he just loved it, Cassavetes. Cassavetes took one scene. He said, "Tim, that's my favorite scene," and it was Blur. One scene, he said, "That I really love."
This guy racked it so I can see this blur. His crying, the tear became a gigantic tear. The moment became this memorable moment because it wasn't straight. It was tilted.
I defy you. I defy you to show me if you're God. If you're better than I am, if you're more than I am, show me. Let me see what I mean to you. Show me if you're really a God.
He was my hero, but the funny thing, he told me, "Tim, you're my hero."
George Lucas from the film, I think it's called the Film Foundation, and Martin Scorsese have put money into restoring the world's greatest sinner. Martin Scorsese used that scene and talks about it in a book, Once Upon a Catholic. In the scenes, the blood scenes in Last Temptation of Christ, he said were inspired by the world's greatest sinner. Maybe there's still an opportunity that somewhere there's a chain of art houses that you actually have this brand new print, and this thing could actually have a short run festival kind of art house release. And the idea of the Academy doing it, it's a form of recognition too, that they've taken, that prominent figures in Hollywood have taken it upon themselves to see that as a project that's worthy. Yeah, the most important thing to anybody at the end of life is your children. What did you give birth to, and what was your relationship to that? But to an artist, it goes beyond that. Of course, it's always going to be the human flesh, but to a true artist, it's the art of my contribution to society, and what did I manage in my short period of time. And so I know my dad, beyond the shadow of a doubt, he conquered that mountain, and so he left the planet knowing that I did well. My dad's greatest contribution was what he left behind, and his example of how he lived his life. And you learn from that too, because you know what not to do, if you're smart. They'd ask him once, you must take coke, like he says, I am cocaine. Yeah, his last word to me was, get me a Perrier. Get me a Perrier.
I want to wait a while yet, but if I do ever get to that point where I meet you again, I just want to say one thing. Let's do it again.